The video's title and thumbnail are displayed as follows. Is Caitlin Clark the greatest of all time in college basketball? Clearly using Caitlin Clark's name to drive it, ESPN knows that Caitlin Clark is the biggest needle mover. In addition, Caitlin Clark isn't even on their list. She was taken off it. This is just another egregious act of disrespect toward Caitlin Clark while promoting their biased narratives. How can you be a top 5 player if you haven't won a title? Yes, okay, so Larry Bird is an all-time great college player? Well, yeah, but he didn't win it. Caitlin Clark took Iowa to back-to-back national championship games, and their excuse that she doesn't have a championship is really the same network that ranks male players as legends regardless of their title count, and they abruptly decide that championships are the only thing that matter when it comes to Caitlin Clark. This is not impressive, and just when you thought they couldn't get any lower, they completely left Clark off their list of the top 5 greatest women's college basketball players of all time. We're not falling for their hypocrisy in this video, which exposes how ESPN is actively diminishing Clark's legacy by playing favorites and rewriting history to fit their agenda. Stay tuned as we expose their double standards one by one. I just don't understand how you can see someone doing more with less in some aspects, but in this one you can't see it and you can't give them credit for that. However, I do find it interesting that they do highlight all of her accomplishments, records that no one else has broken, and they still refuse to rank her among the top 5 best. Caitlin Clark is being used as a ploy. They have to put her name in the title to make sure you know you're watching something about Caitlin Clark, and then the rug is kind of pulled out when it's actually like, nah, she's not even in the top 5. This rule has never applied to any other players in their rankings. They've honored countless male and female players who have never won a title. Their all-time top 5 list for women's college basketball has never applied to any other players. The 2 most renowned college athletes in history never won a national championship, but ESPN had no problem listing them as some of the greatest of all time. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark not only broke records but also changed history by leading her team to consecutive national championship games. If winning a championship is your top criterion, then you can't be on any list. She made the point that Caitlin has made the game bigger than anyone else, which is part of the significance. I suppose you could say the greatness, but the hypocrisy is astounding. It is clear that ESPN is holding Caitlin Clark to a completely different standard for someone who played for a team like Iowa without any championship experience and without any stars surrounding her. It is indisputable that there is one player who led Iowa to the championship and elevated everyone else around her, and her name is Caitlin Clark. To make matters worse, ESPN's use of Clark's name and face to promote the segment was not only disrespectful but downright manipulative. Knowing full well that she is the biggest name and this wasn't just a debate, it was a calculated move to capitalize on Clark's popularity while denying her influence. ESPN is happy to take advantage of Clark's success for views, but when it comes time to give her the respect she deserves, they abruptly change the criteria. Their own analysts even acknowledged on air that leaving Clark off felt wrong, acknowledging that she has dominated women's basketball in a way you have before. This is the thing, love. Women's basketball ranks players based on having a bit of an unfair way just to rank a player's potential. Caitlin Clark is a 3-time NCAA scoring leader and assist leader, a true point guard for the people, 2-time Nation Player of the Year, 2-time AP Player of the Year, and she broke the records of Kelsey Plum and Sabrina. I won't deny that she has transcended the game, but in our open we said, who weights what makes a top 5 player winning? The only thing against her is that she hasn't won a national championship, and that's the only thing you can say against her. It's a great point, which is why I agree with you, but instead of sticking to the facts, ESPN is blatantly shifting the goalpost to downplay Caitlin Clark's greatness. They refuse to acknowledge her influence even though she has done more for women's basketball than anyone in recent memory. When someone says, oh, she didn't win a championship, how did they respond? What about getting Iowa? If you don't think Caitlin Clark is among the top 5 basketball players of all time, then I have to disagree for the simple reason that she didn't win a championship. Championships are something that a team does together and accomplishes. Clark didn't just dominate at Iowa, she broke records, elevated the entire game, and led a team without a championship pedigree to back-to-back national titles. However, why do individual awards exist if championships were the only thing that defined greatness? The fact that Breanna Stewart, who is on this list, played at UConn with a number of other pros and WNBA players, as well as being a part of a stacked team at UConn or South Carolina and winning the national championship, is more impressive than sticking with your small home school that isn't surrounded by great talent and taking them all the way to the brink of championships. What's even more impressive is Caitlin Clark, who holds the all-time scoring record in both men's and women's college basketball. In addition, ESPN conveniently ignored her unmatched individual stats, which should have placed her in the top 5 if not at number 1. Firmly establishes her as one of the greatest players of all time, but her influence goes far beyond her ability to score points. She was also a dominant playmaker who consistently led in assists and improved the performance of everyone around her. In other words, she didn't just score points, she improved the performance of her entire team. Breanna Stewart won numerous championships, and it's clear that she squatted up with many future WNBA players. Her accolades speak for themselves. She's a 2-time AP Player of the Year, a 3-time All-American, a 2-time Naismith Player of the Year, and a 2-time Wood Award winner in almost every category that defines an all-time great. Let's compare this. It's kind of silly when you actually analyze and logically approach it for a moment, because who from those other lists could you put on the Iowa teams and they get to back-to-back championships? Her offensive skill set is unmatched and her influence on the game transcends stats. There have always been the dominant teams, like South Carolina and UConn. I believe that the fact that Caitlin Clark started on a team that didn't have mind-blowing talent existing and brought that team to the top. One of ESPN's biggest mistakes is the fact that Clark accomplished more with less than players like Breanna Stewart, Cheryl Miller, and Maya Moore, who were surrounded by stacked rosters full of All-Americans and future WNBA stars. Clark didn't have that same advantages. Iowa was never a powerhouse program. She didn't inherit a championship-caliber team, instead she built one. Often you as an individual can really raise that team up and bring them to a championship. One of the greatest college basketball players of all time, but would she have been able to win that championship if she had been on an Iowa team? Consider Breanna Stewart at UConn, where she played with several elite players, had the advantage of Hall of Fame coaching, and was a part of an already dominant dynasty. Now imagine if Clark had been in that system when Stewart was playing for Iowa. Would Stewart have led that team to consecutive national championship games the way Clark did? The same is true for Cheryl Miller, who played at USC with future Hall of Famers. The missed Breanna Stewart's team is the Clark, on the other hand, was the only reason Iowa even had a chance to compete for a title. Her leadership, vision, and ability to elevate a team turned a mid-tier program into a contender. That kind of influence should matter far more than the number of trophies on the shelf. Their ranking is that Breanna Stewart is the best college basketball player of all time, followed by Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, and then in second place. Breanna Stewart's talent, which she demonstrated by winning a championship WNBA ring on the Liberty, did not elevate that team to any high level, and she unmatched herself. Cheryl Miller was given the 5th spot, but Clark's greatness goes beyond her on-court accomplishments. It also includes how she transformed the sport, something that ESPN conveniently overlooked before Clark's women's college basketball wasn't drawing record-breaking viewership. She packed arenas, drove TV ratings to all-time highs, and skyrocketed merchandise sales. No other player in ESPN's rankings had this much of an impact on the game. Clark didn't just dominate statistically, even ESPN's own analysts acknowledged that her influence was unmatched, but they still excluded her from their WNBA Player of the Month and Rookie of the Month in the same month. Most points by a point guard in a season, most double-doubles by a rookie guard in WNBA history, most points by a rookie guard in WNBA history, most assists by a rookie in WNBA history, the first WNBA rookie to record 2 triple-doubles, the first triple-double by a rookie in WNBA history, the first triple-double in FIBA history, the first player in WNBA history to win Rookie of the Month 4 times, Eastern Conference Player of the Week 3 times, and Rookie of the Month record for assists, rookie record for three-pointers, single game record for assists 19. And this leads us to the larger problem, ESPN's blatant bias. If Clark were any other player, there's no question that she would be treated differently. ESPN has consistently promoted narratives that minimize her accomplishments while elevating their chosen stars. This lack of respect is not limited to this ranking. As we've already noted, they have honored numerous all-time greats who never won a college championship, including Pete Merrill, Oscar Robertson, and Larry Bird, win a championship, but ESPN never questioned their status as one of the greatest. However, when it comes to Clark, the rules changed the franchise record for the most doubles, three-pointers, and assists in a game. She was the fastest NBA player to reach 100 three-pointers in 34 games, and she received the most fan votes ever in a WNBA All-Star game, 700,000. Of those players, the fastest player to reach 350 points and 150 assists to begin a season, regardless of years in the league, people will say to pay more attention to the other people, as if she couldn't do it herself. When it comes to controversies, the double standard is even more obvious. For example, when Angel Reese taunted Clark in the national championship game, ESPN rushed to defend her, calling it competitive fire. But when Clark displayed the same energy on the field, ESPN found a way to downplay her accomplishments. I understand that this bias isn't just reflected in rankings, but also in the way they cover Clark compared to other players. They constantly hype up athletes like Angel Reese, Asia Wilson, and South Carolina's dynasty, but when Clark sets a record, they hardly acknowledge them. The inconsistency is indisputable, and it's not just about Reese. When another player succeeds, ESPN portrays it as a triumph over adversity. When Clark succeeds, they either ignore it or find a way to discredit it. The association gave us a gem that I partially paid for, but they took money out of my check, so you better make the most of that, man. I have a hot tub, a weight room, a full-court basketball court, and when I walk in today, I'm working out Caitlin Clark on one side, and I really look at myself there. I know I say what's up, but I'm not the type to say what's up to interrupt your workout, because I don't like people to interrupt mine. She can shoot the ball, and the WNBA assist leader this past year can shoot the ball. She's a great shooter, and she's one of those workout people. You go to Patty, they've spent more time covering WNBA players who criticize Clark than actually celebrating her accomplishments. They keep pushing the idea that she's overrated, despite all the statistical and financial evidence to the contrary. You know, when I go to the court, I have to hit that bike. I'm older now, so I have to get on that bike and walk for a couple 5, 6, and 7 minutes. As I'm walking through the park, I'm watching her shoot it, and she's one of those shooters. If you're a G-rat, you're like, damn bro, why do you throw that pass bad? Give me the ball in my chest. And I'm thinking, oh, she's a gangsta, she's lighting up. I'm not sure what drill she was doing, but she was doing a 2-in-a-row corner wing, and if you miss again, you have to go back to the starting spot. She had a nice drill. Caitlin Clark is the biggest superstar women's basketball player ever, and ESPN knows it. They understand that she is the reason behind record-breaking attendance figures, that she is the driving force behind women's college basketball's historic TV ratings, and that she is the reason the WNBA is finally getting mainstream attention. However, they refuse to properly acknowledge her, because doing so would contradict the narrative they've spent creating about her. She was literally stealing it, which is nice, and she was shooting the out of it. Of course she was correct, so she was shooting the out of it. ESPN has long positioned some athletes as the faces of women's basketball, spending a lot of money to promote their chosen stars. However, Clark's ascent has destroyed that illusion. To acknowledge her for who she really is would mean acknowledging that she has outperformed the players they have spent years hyping up, rather than accepting that they try to minimize her influence, leave her out of historical rankings, and act as though her impact isn't as game-changing as it actually is. Peeps, Sheryl Swoopes has been absent. If you see Sheryl Swoopes, they have an APB out for her. She spoke extensively a few months ago about the Indiana Fever's locker room environment, how people didn't want to play there, and how people wanted to leave. But fans aren't duped. They see what's happening, how ESPN is bending stories to suit their own agenda, and no matter how hard the network tries to minimize her, the fact remains that Clark has changed women's basketball in a way that no player before her has ever done. Therefore, the bigger question is whether ESPN is willing to manipulate history. At this point, ESPN can change rankings, goalposts, and the Indiana Fever are that golden destination, and I can't help but laugh at the fans and media commentators who said that nobody wanted to play in Indiana. That doesn't make sense, and what's even more telling is that ESPN has refused to properly acknowledge her. Caitlin Clark isn't just a great player, she's one of the greatest to ever step onto the court. Her influence goes beyond statistics. I can't help but laugh at the fact that she brought millions of new fans into the sport, highlights their own priorities. They aren't interested in celebrating true greatness, and instead they are interested in promoting narratives. They will continue to defend some players while disparaging others, ignoring the fact that Clark has done more to advance the game than anyone in recent memory. However, the truth is that fans don't need ESPN's approval. Clark's legacy is defined by her records, her influence, and the millions of people who have supported her over the years. History won't remember ESPN's rankings in the future. Instead, it will remember the unquestionable truth of what Caitlin Clark has accomplished, completed. So let ESPN carry on with their games. Clark is out there creating history, and the world is watching. Are you watching? If so, please let us know in the comments. Subscribe, and enable all notifications so you don't miss a thing. Click the video on the screen, and we'll see you in the next one.